The crystalline spires of New Valencia pierced the amber sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons in a dazzling display of wealth and power. Far below these towering monuments to excess, in the shadows of the great city's underbelly, Talia pressed her palm against the genetic scanner and waited for the familiar sting that would grant her access to the servant corridors of the imperial palace. The scanner pulsed with a soft blue light, reading the carefully engineered markers in her DNA that branded her as property of the Celestial Empire. Like all servants, she had been designed in the Empire's laboratories, enhanced for loyalty, efficiency, and grace. But something had gone wrong in Talia's creation, or perhaps terribly right. The changes meant to ensure docility had instead awakened something else, something she kept hidden behind carefully practiced smiles and lowered eyes. Servant T-1138, cleared for morning rotation, the scanner announced, its mechanical voice echoing in the empty corridor. Talia slipped through the opening doors, her movements fluid and silent, a shadow among shadows. The servant passages were a maze of narrow corridors and hidden lifts, designed to keep the Empire's workforce invisible to the nobility they served. Today's assignment took her to the private wings of the imperial family, where even breathing too loudly could be considered an offense. As she prepared the morning chambers, Talia's enhanced senses picked up fragments of conversation from the main corridors, whispers of unrest in the outer colonies, of growing dissatisfaction among the engineered servant class. "The harmony protocols are failing," one voice murmured, barely audible through the ornate walls. "The genetic controls aren't as effective as they once were." Talia's hands stilled for a moment as she arranged delicate crystal flowers in a floating vase. She knew better than most how true those words were. The protocols that should have made her content with servitude instead filled her with questions, with dreams of something more. She had learned to hide these thoughts, to bury them beneath layers of perfect service, but they burned in her chest like embers waiting to ignite. The morning passed in a carefully choreographed dance of service. Talia moved from room to room, invisible to the nobles who walked past her as if she were merely another piece of furniture. Yet she watched them, studied them with eyes designed to miss nothing. She saw the strain beneath their perfect facades, the cracks in their carefully maintained veneer of superiority. It was during the afternoon rotation that everything changed. As Talia cleaned the great library, a vast chamber filled with both physical books and holographic archives, she discovered something that made her enhanced heart skip a beat. Hidden behind a panel of rare Martian mahogany was a dated datapad, its screen still active. The document displayed bore the imperial seal and contained information about the genetic engineering program that had created her. According to the document, the Harmony protocols had been based on ancient Earth technology, discovered in the ruins of a civilization that had nearly destroyed itself in pursuit of perfection. The Empire had modified these protocols, believing they had removed the flaws that had led to their creator's downfall. But there was something else, something that made Talia's hands tremble as she read. A small percentage of subjects were developing unexpected mutations, their enhanced abilities evolving beyond the Empire's control. The sound of approaching footsteps forced Talia to quickly replace the datapad and resume her duties. But the information burned in her mind, connecting pieces of a puzzle she hadn't even known she was solving. The strange abilities she'd kept hidden, her perfect recall, her ability to sense emotions and intentions, the way she could sometimes move faster than should be possible, weren't glitches in her programming. They were evolutionary adaptations, signs that the Empire's careful genetic engineering was breaking down. As she completed her final tasks for the day, Talia's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. If she wasn't alone, if others like her existed, what did that mean for the carefully ordered society of the Celestial Empire? And more importantly, what would happen when the nobility discovered that their perfect servants were becoming something more than they had intended? The answer came sooner than she expected. As she prepared to leave for the servant quarters, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow, and the sound of running feet echoed through both main halls and servant passages. "Security breach in Section 7, a voice announced over the communications system. All security personnel to the royal wing. All servants return to quarters immediately. Talia hesitated. Section 7 was near the library where she had found the datapad. Had someone discovered it was accessed? Were they coming for her? But as she listened to the chaos unfolding around her, she realized this was something else entirely. The pattern of movement, the urgency in the guards' voices, this wasn't about a servant's indiscretion. This was something far more dangerous. Making a decision that would forever alter her fate, Talia turned away from the servant quarters and moved deeper into the palace. Whatever was happening, she knew it would change everything. The careful balance of power that had maintained the empire's rigid hierarchy was about to shift, and Talia would either become part of that change or be destroyed by it. As she moved through the shadows of the palace, her enhanced senses alert for any threat, Talia realized that the time for hiding was over. The abilities she had so carefully concealed might be the only thing standing between order and chaos in the hours to come. The question was, which side would she choose when the moment of truth arrived? The royal wing blazed with emergency lights as Talia moved silently through the chaos. Guards rushed past her, their plasma rifles humming with deadly energy, but none spared a glance for another servant. Their oversight was her advantage. Years of being treated as invisible had taught her to move through the palace like a ghost, unnoticed and unremarkable. Her enhanced hearing picked up fragments of urgent communications, breach in the princess's chambers. Multiple hostiles. Secure the air. The pieces clicked together in her mind, forming a picture that made her blood run cold. This wasn't a simple security breach, it was an assassination attempt. Princess Novaya, the youngest daughter of the emperor, was barely 16 and already known throughout the empire for her controversial views on servant rights. While others of her station saw the genetically engineered servants as little more than sophisticated machines, Novaya had begun questioning the ethics of their creation and treatment. Such thoughts were dangerous in the Celestial Empire, where power was built on the foundation of absolute control. Talia reached a junction in the servant passages and pressed her hand against the cool metal wall, closing her eyes to focus. Her enhanced senses stretched out, filtering through the cacophony of panic until she caught it, the sound of struggle, muffled but distinct, coming from behind the princess's private meditation chamber. The security forces were focusing their search on the main approaches to the royal wing, but Talia knew something they didn't. The meditation chamber, like every room in the palace, was accessible through the servant passages. Passages that were considered too narrow and too well monitored to pose any security risk. But they hadn't accounted for someone like her. Moving with preternatural speed, Talia navigated the twisted corridors until she reached the hidden entrance to the meditation chamber. The access panel here required a royal override, but Talia had discovered long ago that her enhanced abilities included an unusual affinity for the palace's security systems. She placed her hand on the scanner, concentrating until she felt the familiar tingle of connection. The panel flickered, struggled, then yielded. The scene that greeted her confirmed her worst fears. 3 figures in stealth suits had Princess Novia cornered against the chamber's crystalline windows. The princess's personal guards lay unconscious, or worse, on the polished floor. One of the attackers held a neural disruptor, its tip crackling with energy designed to scramble human consciousness beyond repair. "Your father's reign of genetic tyranny ends with you," one of the assassins growled, voice distorted by their stealth suit's masking system. "The natural order must be restored." Novia stood tall despite her fear, her emerald eyes blazing with defiance. "Killing me won't end the Empire's progress. You can't stop the evolution of our society." "No," the assassin agreed, raising the neural disruptor, "but it will send a message." Time seemed to slow as Talia's enhanced systems kicked into overdrive. In that fractional moment, she made a choice that would reshape not just her life, but the future of the Empire itself. She launched herself from the servant's entrance, her body moving faster than any unmodified human could track. The first assassin went down before they registered her presence, a precise strike to their neural cluster sending them crashing to the floor. The second managed to turn, weapon raising, but Talia was already inside their guard. She moved with fluid grace, using their own momentum to send them flying into the chamber's ornate walls. The leader, the one with the neural disruptor, was more prepared. They fired, the crackling beam of energy cutting through the air where Talia had been a split second before. But her enhanced reflexes allowed her to dance around the deadly beam, closing the distance in a blur of motion. The assassin's stealth suit sparked and failed as Talia's precisely targeted strikes overwhelmed its defensive systems. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. 3 of the Empire's most elite assassins lay neutralized, and Princess Novia stood staring at her servant savior with wide, astonished eyes. "You're like me," Novia whispered, and Talia's head snapped up in surprise. The princess stepped forward, holding out her hand. A small object floated above her palm, a crystalline paperweight that had been on her desk moments before. They tried to suppress it in the royal line, too. The evolutionary changes. But they couldn't stop all of us. Before Talia could respond, the chamber's main doors burst open. Royal guards flooded in, weapons ready, led by Commander Rodek, the head of palace security. His cybernetic eye scanned the scene, processing the neutralized threats and the unlikely pair standing amid the chaos. "Your Highness," he began, then stopped as he took in Talia's presence and the obvious signs of combat. His augmented vision would be recording everything, documenting proof that a servant had demonstrated abilities far beyond their programming. "This servant saved my life," Novia declared firmly, stepping forward to stand beside Talia. "And in doing so, she has exposed a truth that can no longer be denied. The time for change has come to the Celestial Empire, whether we're ready for it or not." Talia stood perfectly still, aware that she was balanced on a knife's edge between execution and something entirely unprecedented. The genetic abilities she had hidden for so long were now exposed, but so too was the princess's secret. They were bound together now, 2 examples of evolution defying the careful constraints of imperial engineering. Commander Rodek's expression remained unreadable as he lowered his weapon. "The Emperor will need to be informed immediately." His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Talia. "Both of you will need to come with me." As they were escorted from the meditation chamber, Talia caught Novia's eye. The princess gave her a subtle nod, and in that moment, Talia understood that this was more than just an assassination attempt thwarted. This was the beginning of a revolution, one that would challenge the very foundations of their society. The careful order of the Celestial Empire was about to change forever, and she would be at the heart of that transformation. The Emperor's private audience chamber hung suspended in the heart of New Valencia's highest spire, surrounded by force fields and quantum barriers that made it virtually impenetrable. As Talia stood beside Princess Novia, facing Emperor Darius and his inner council, she felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down upon them. The Emperor sat upon the crystalline throne, his form enhanced by subtle biotechnology that made him seem more than human. His silver eyes, another sign of genetic modification, studied them with unnerving intensity. Around him, the members of the inner council shifted uneasily in their floating chairs, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. So, Emperor Darius spoke, his voice resonating with artificial harmonics. The protocols that were meant to ensure stability have instead bred chaos. He gestured to a holographic display showing Talia's combat performance in the meditation chamber. A servant with the fighting skills of an elite warrior. A princess with telekinetic abilities. The very foundations of our society are being challenged. "Father," Novia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "What happened today proves that change is inevitable. The genetic modifications that built our empire are evolving, adapting. We can either embrace this transformation or be destroyed by it." High Counselor Ven, a woman whose age was masked by extensive genetic treatments, leaned forward. "These aberrations must be contained. The servant should be terminated, and the princess. She hesitated, glancing at the emperor, should be placed in protective isolation until we understand the extent of these mutations. Talia remained silent, her enhanced senses taking in every detail of the chamber. She noticed the subtle ways the force fields shifted, the hidden security measures that could eliminate threats in seconds. But she also noticed something else, the faint tremor in the emperor's hand, the way his silver eyes seemed to flicker occasionally. The man who ruled the Celestial Empire was afraid. The assassination attempt was not random, Commander Rodek interjected, his cybernetic eye projecting new data into the chamber's holographic display. Our investigation suggests it was orchestrated by a group calling themselves the Purists. They believe that genetic engineering has corrupted humanity's natural evolution. And they may have supporters within the highest levels of the Empire. The chamber erupted in murmurs and accusations, but Talia's attention was drawn to High Counselor Ven. The woman's heart rate had spiked at the mention of the Purists, her perfectly manicured hands clenching imperceptibly on her chair's arms. File fragments from the hidden datapad in the library suddenly connected in Talia's mind, forming a disturbing pattern. Your Majesty, Talia spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the chamber's chaos. Every head turned toward her, some counselors appearing shocked that a servant would dare speak in the Emperor's presence. The Harmony protocols were never meant to be permanent, were they? The original Earth scientists designed them to be a stepping stone, not a final destination. Emperor Darius's silver eyes widened slightly. How could you possibly know that? Because she's proof of their true purpose, Novaya interrupted, moving to stand shoulder to shoulder with Talia. The protocols weren't meant to create perfect servants or rulers. They were meant to guide humanity's next evolutionary step. But someone buried that truth, twisted the protocols to maintain power instead of progress. High Counselor Ven stood abruptly. This is absurd. We cannot entertain these theories from a malfunctioning servant and a misguided child. Yet the evidence is before us, Commander Rodek countered, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Ven. And our security systems indicate that someone in this chamber is transmitting data to an outside source at this very moment. The next few seconds exploded into chaos. High Counselor Ven's chair suddenly transformed, mechanical components emerging from its seemingly ornamental design. Energy weapons deployed, targeting the Emperor with lethal precision. But Talia was already moving, her enhanced reflexes carrying her through the air as Novaya's telekinetic power deflected the first burst of energy. The chamber's security systems activated, but they seemed to be responding to conflicting commands. Some targeted Ven, while others turned on the Emperor himself. Talia realized with horror that the conspiracy ran deeper than anyone had suspected, the Empire's own security infrastructure had been compromised. As plasma bolts crisscrossed the chamber, Talia reached the Emperor, shielding him with her body while Novia created a telekinetic barrier around them. The other council members scattered, some revealing hidden weapons of their own, while Commander Rodek's cybernetics sparked with electrical interference. The Purists send their regards, Ven snarled, her elegant appearance melting away to reveal extensive combat modifications. The age of genetic tyranny ends today. But in their focus on the Emperor, the conspirators had made a crucial mistake. They had forgotten that Talia's enhanced abilities included more than just combat skills. As chaos engulfed the chamber, she reached out with her mind, connecting to the palace's security systems just as she had done countless times before with smaller systems. The vast network of quantum computers that controlled the palace defenses responded to her touch, recognizing in her genetic code something that resonated with their core programming. In that moment, Talia understood why the Harmony protocols had given her these abilities. She wasn't just a servant who could fight, she was a bridge between human and machine, between the past and the future. With a thought, she began to wrest control of the security systems back from the conspirators. But as alarms blared throughout the palace and hidden doors began to seal, she realized this was only the beginning. The real war for the future of the Celestial Empire was about to begin. The palace's quantum shield grid pulsed with crimson energy as Talia fought for control of its systems. Throughout New Valencia, security protocols were activating, responding to the chaos unfolding in the Emperor's audience chamber. But for every system she secured, another slipped from her grasp, the palace's network having become a battlefield between competing forces. Multiple breaches detected, Commander Rodek announced, his cybernetic systems finally stabilizing. The purists aren't just in the palace, they're taking control of key infrastructure throughout the city. This was coordinated. They're staging a coup. Through the chamber's crystal walls, they could see ships rising from hidden hangars, their hulls bearing the distinctive markings of the Imperial fleet. But these vessels weren't responding to the palace's commands. Instead, they were taking up attack positions, their weapon systems charging. "They'll destroy everything we've built," Emperor Darius whispered, his enhanced voice cracking with genuine emotion for the first time. All to return to some imagined pure state of humanity. High Counselor Ven laughed, the sound distorted by her combat modifications. "What we've built is an abomination. Genetic engineering, synthetic evolution, you've led humanity away from its true path. The purists will cleanse this corruption, starting with the symbols of your power." Talia's mind raced as she maintained her connection to the palace systems. Through the security network, she could sense more purist agents emerging throughout the complex. Many wore the faces of trusted officials and guards, their true allegiances hidden until this moment. But she could also sense something else, other servants like her, their enhanced abilities awakening in response to the crisis. "Father," Novia's voice cut through the chaos, "we need to evacuate the palace. Not just us, everyone. If the purists take control of the orbital defense platforms." The princess didn't need to finish. Everyone knew that the platforms could reduce New Valencia to ash. It was a failsafe built into the Empire's power structure, meant to prevent any single city from rebelling. Now it might become their doom. "The evacuation protocols require your genetic authorization," Commander Rodek said to the Emperor. "But once initiated, they'll be visible to the enemy fleet." Emperor Darius straightened, something of his former authority returning. "Then we'll give them more than one target. Talia, your connection to our systems, can you initiate multiple evacuation protocols simultaneously?" Understanding dawned as Talia processed the Emperor's strategy. "Yes, Your Majesty. I can trigger evacuations across all major city centers. They won't know which movements are real and which are decoys." "Do it," he commanded, then turned to his daughter. "Novia, find the other awakened ones. Both servants and nobles. We'll need every evolved ability we have to survive what's coming." The princess nodded, closing her eyes in concentration. Objects around the chamber began to float as she extended her telekinetic senses outward, searching for others like her and Talia. The strain showed on her face, but her determination never wavered. "You're only delaying the inevitable," Ven snarled, her combat systems recharging. "The pure human form will prevail." "The pure human form is a myth," Talia responded, her voice steady as she worked through the city's systems. "Humanity has always evolved, always changed. The only constant is transformation." As if in response to her words, the chamber's quantum barriers suddenly shifted, their color changing from crimson to a deep purple. Throughout the palace, similar transformations were taking place as more enhanced servants connected to the security network, adding their unique abilities to Talia's efforts. Multiple contacts approaching from the outer colonies, Commander Rodek reported, his cybernetic eye tracking data streams. Ships bearing Imperial markings, but... He paused, his organic eye widening, they're crewed by evolved servants and sympathetic nobles. They received Novia's previous transmissions about genetic rights. They're here to help. The chamber shook as the first exchanges of fire began between the Purist-controlled ships and the Loyalist fleet. Throughout New Valencia, evacuation protocols launched, sending millions of citizens to designated safety zones. But Talia could sense that the purists had anticipated this. They had agents in place throughout the city, ready to turn the exodus into a massacre. "We need to split up," she announced, making a rapid decision. "Your Majesty, you and Commander Radek need to reach the deep bunkers. Princess Novaya, gather our evolved allies and coordinate with the Loyalist fleet. I'll try to maintain control of critical systems and protect the evacuation routes." "You're giving orders now, servant?" Ven laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in her voice. "No," Talia replied, her enhanced systems fully integrating with the palace network. "I'm fulfilling the true purpose of the Harmony protocols. We were never meant to be servants or masters. We were meant to be guardians of humanity's evolution." With that, the chamber's systems responded to her command, creating a containment field around Ven even as emergency exits opened for the others. The next few hours would determine not just their fate, but the future of human evolution itself. And as Talia prepared to face that future, she realized that the titles of servant and noble no longer mattered. They were all simply human, standing together against those who would deny their right to grow and change. Through the palace's sensors, she could see the battle for New Valencia beginning in earnest. But she could also see hope, evolved humans of all social classes coming together, using their enhanced abilities not for power or control, but for protection and progress. The revolution had begun, but it wasn't the one the purists had planned. It was a revolution of unity, of acceptance, of embracing humanity's potential to become something greater than the sum of its parts. The night sky blazed with the exchange of weapon fire between purist and loyalist vessels, their energy weapons painting deadly auroras across the stratosphere. Through her connection to the city's systems, Talia could sense the flow of battle, could feel the pulse of every defense grid and security checkpoint. But more importantly, she could feel the others like her, hundreds of enhanced humans, both servant and noble, awakening to their true potential. Their minds touched the city's network, adding their strength to hers, creating a symphony of consciousness that the purists hadn't anticipated. The evacuation corridors in sectors 7 through 12 are compromised, Commander Radek's voice crackled through the secure channel. Purist forces are targeting civilian transports. Not for long, Novia responded. Through the security feeds, Talia watched as the princess led a group of telekinetics, their combined power lifting debris to create barriers protecting the evacuation routes. Former servants worked alongside nobleborn, their genetic gifts complementing each other in ways the rigid social hierarchy had never allowed before. High above, the orbital defense platforms remained the greatest threat. If the purists gained control of them, New Valencia would be reduced to ash. Talia directed her consciousness upward, through layers of security and quantum encryption, racing against purist hackers who were attempting to do the same. "Multiple impacts in the government district," reported a loyalist officer. "The purist ground forces are advancing on the palace archives. They're after the original genetic research." "Let them come," Emperor Darius's voice was firm. He had refused evacuation, instead coordinating the defense from the palace's command center. "The truth in those archives will only prove what we now know, that evolution cannot be contained or controlled." Talia split her attention between the orbital platforms and the ground battle, using her enhanced processing abilities to manage multiple systems simultaneously. Through the security network, she could sense Ven being transported to a high-security containment facility, along with other captured purist leaders. But the coup attempt had revealed just how deep their infiltration went. "Incoming transmission," Commander Radek announced suddenly. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies." A face appeared on every screen and holographic display in the city, a man whose features had been surgically altered to match pre-genetic engineering human standards. "Citizens of the corrupt Celestial Empire," he began, "I am Junction, leader of the purist movement. What you witness today is not destruction, but cleansing. The genetic abominations that rule you have led humanity away from its true path. We offer you salvation through purification. Talia felt a surge of anger from the evolved humans connected to the network. But before anyone could respond, another voice cut through, Princess Novia's. You speak of humanity's true path, she said, her words carrying to every corner of the city, but you fear humanity's true potential. Look around you. See how those you call abominations risk their lives to protect others. Watch as former servants and nobles work together, using their gifts not for power, but for preservation. Through the network, Talia sensed a shift in the battle. The purest forces, expecting to face a disorganized and divided opposition, found themselves against a unified front. Every evolved human in New Valencia, regardless of their origin, was now part of something greater. The orbital platforms. Commander Rodek's warning came just as Talia detected it, a massive surge of energy as the purists made their final push for control. If they succeeded, everything and everyone below would be incinerated. In that moment, Talia made a decision. She had been holding back, afraid of losing herself in the vast digital consciousness of the city's network. But now she let go of that fear, allowing her enhanced mind to fully merge with the systems. Every camera became her eyes, every sensor her nerves, every defense grid an extension of her will. The sensation was overwhelming. She could feel the individual minds of other evolved humans joining her, lending their strength. Novia's consciousness touched hers, the princess's telekinetic abilities somehow translating into the digital realm, helping to shape and direct the flood of data. As one unified consciousness, they drove the purest presence from the orbital platforms. Security systems that had been fighting each other suddenly synchronized, turning the city's full defensive capabilities against the coup forces. Purist ships found their systems locked out, their weapons disabled, their engines shutting down. Impossible, Junction's voice cracked as he witnessed his forces being systematically neutralized. What are you? We are humanity's future, Talia responded, her voice carrying the harmony of thousands of evolved minds. Not because we were engineered to be, but because we chose to be. Together. The battle for New Valencia ended not with a devastating strike from orbit, but with a wave of surrenders as purist forces found themselves outmaneuvered on every front. The orbital platforms, now secure, stood as silent guardians rather than instruments of destruction. In the days that followed, as the city began to rebuild, the true transformation began. Emperor Darius, whether from genuine conviction or political necessity, declared an end to the rigid social hierarchy. The genetic engineering program was reformed, its true purpose restored, not to create servants and masters, but to help all humanity reach its potential. The palace archives were open to the public, revealing both the triumphs and mistakes of the past. The truth about the Harmony protocols became common knowledge, how they had been designed to guide humanity's next evolutionary step, only to be twisted into tools of control. Talia found herself in a new role, neither servant nor noble, but something else entirely. Together with Novia and others like them, she helped establish the Unity Council, a governing body representing all enhanced humans regardless of their origin. The council worked alongside the traditional imperial government, ensuring that the power of genetic engineering would never again be used to oppress. 1 month after the battle, Talia stood with Novia on a balcony overlooking New Valencia. The city's crystal spires still reached toward the stars, but now they seemed less like symbols of division and more like bridges between earth and sky, past and future. Do you ever miss it? Novia asked. The simplicity of your old life? Talia watched as a group of children played in a nearby park, their nascent genetic gifts manifesting in small but wondrous ways. Former servant children and noble-born played together, learning to use their abilities in harmony. No, she replied softly. We were never meant for simplicity. We were meant for this, for growth, for change, for becoming more than what we were created to be. Above them, the 3 moons of New Valencia cast their light on a city transformed. The rigid boundaries between servant and noble had dissolved, replaced by a new understanding of what it meant to be human in an evolving universe. The Celestial Empire had not fallen, it had transcended, becoming something greater than its founders could have imagined. And somewhere in the vast network that connected them all, Talia could feel the pulse of change continuing, the next steps in humanity's journey already beginning to unfold.